live on Facebook and YouTube. Thanks to everybody who's going to be tuning in. Hop in the chat. We'll try to answer any questions or read any comments here that we see. It's a big week ahead here as the football season is rolling along. We've got a rivalry week in the state of North Dakota. NDSU looks to revenge last year's blowout loss in Grand Forks against the effing Hawks. Or the Fighting Hawk Tuas, whatever you want to call them. Going to recap a wild weekend in college football, one of the best to date. Georgia was dead. They were alive, and then they were dead. Kentucky, Mark Stoops gets a big win. And, we'll pick our Week 5 team of the week. And then, NFL. This wasn't an overly – I didn't think it was an overly impressive Week 4. It was kind of there. And then, we're going to look ahead to a, not a great week in college football for Week 6, but, we're going to talk NDSU, UND, and then in the NFL, and a little bit of a lackluster week in the NFL as well, as far as games go. I don't know. What say you, Grant?
For college-wise, we're setting up absolute cinema for these next 2 weekends. If you look at the schedule to Week 6, and then those 2 games in the conference where it just means more in Week 7, we can't have that 3 weeks in a row. Our hearts are not capable for that. So we need a little lull. We need a week where it's kind of just meh to get us really ramped up for Week 6 and Week 7.
You're probably right, but I mean, for some teams like Michigan, where they look like they're defending national champions in the first half, and then they make you sweat it out in the second half. Your heart really can't take that either. But you push through, and then you coach a junior high game, and you have kids that do the right things. And we're a what the ref call on this show. But I kind of explained to you, Grant, about what happened to our junior high team on Monday. We had the ball at about the 1-inch line. It was very much a field position game. The wind was swirling. Something I've never really do is try to use timeouts in the second half, in the third quarter. But the wind was so bad that I used 2 timeouts to make them punt it on 4th down and have them force them to punt into the wind. Something they did not do in the first quarter. It was like 38 seconds. It was 4th down, and I'm like, kids are all just staring at me, like looking like, what are we doing? I'm like, just wait. And I'm like, the coach, he's not going to take a timeout. What's going on here? I was like, okay, if he's not taking it, we're running it all the way down. We did. We got some good field position, and then in the fourth quarter, is our first play of the fourth quarter. We had the ball at about a 1-inch line. We ran a pop pass on the play before to get down to like the 1. And then we punch it in, and all of a sudden I look over, the side judge on our sideline throws a flag up, and I'm like, I'm like, we were good. Like, I watched, like, we had everybody. And then I went back and I watched it because they stream all the games now on NFHS, which is actually really cool. And so, like, I went back and watched, and they said the official on our side, we had a receiver on the other side, throws the flag on the receiver on the opposite side of the field after our kid went to the ref and said, I'm on the ball. And then I watched it on video of him tell him, back up. So he backed up. What we teach the kids to do. He got penalized for doing what he did, and he's like, well, I looked that he didn't look like he was up far enough, but the ref on the other side said he was good. Why is he calling? Well, he's a new ref and we want to stop it. But it's like, why are we penalizing the kid for doing what he's supposed to be doing? Like this is something that you can talk about when you have coffee and watch film. And also, I mean, it was on the 1-foot line, so it's not like you're going to have a down the line shot. This isn't Division I college football. This is junior high football in North Dakota here. It was I kept my cool because I also understood the situation. And then I told the kids after the game that it was like I also screwed up because the next play, instead of running it down their throat, which we were doing a good job, I got too cute and decided to run a jet sweep. We lost more, and then it was like a 4th and goal from the 11, and we didn't get it. We ended up getting the ball back. I was very proud of our kids. We getting us the ball back, and then we were able to go down and score. First time I've ever been a part of a tie coaching a game. We scored, and then we went for 2. And because, well, it's junior high, we don't have a kicker yet. But went for 2, didn't get it. So, it's better than losing, I guess. But it stinks that it came down to that, and we came out a little bit flat in the first half. They returned the opening kickoff. So defensively, we pitched a shutout, but yeah, it was just that. But I was proud of the effort, and got one game left, and just try to enjoy the last of it. I actually had to condition with the kids today, and
did MCDC it?
Something like that. So, one of our assistant coaches is a Saints fan, and if you remember in week 2, I told him there's no way the Saints are beating the Cowboys, and well, that did not end well. It was kind of like roles reversed, because when I went to Cowboys Saints, crazy thing, that was 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
You're like, the Saints are going to win by 60, right? You told me, and I said that, kind of reversed it on him. Well, it bit you in the ass, it bit me in the ass. So I had to go and do it. It's called the Battle of San Juan Hill, which Theodore Roosevelt is very big on the west side of North Dakota because he lived here for a little bit. And it's called the Medora Musical, and they always have that battle in the show. So, it's teaching them, they got to run up the hill, and then once they get to this half dummy, they got to break down and buzz and then make the tackle and then run back down the hill, and then they start again. They're in 3 lines, and then once everybody goes, they go again. So that was our conditioning today, and I still have like heartburn from it.
So long story short, whenever the Cowboys and Saints play in Dallas, don't make a guarantee on the game. That's what I got.
That is correct. Yes.
That's what I got out of it. To get out of conditioning, which nobody likes to do, Cowboys and Saints play in Dallas. Just do your best and not say anything. Just be quiet. Mum's the word.
This is part of the later on in the show, I have put my foot in my mouth maybe a little bit too soon here too, where I could have for some reason I like to make stupid bets, and I have friends that they make sure they hold you accountable for it, and so I'll talk about that one here in a little bit, but
that's why you'd have to make stupid bets with me, because I wouldn't, if it was like, I wouldn't make anyone follow through on it. I'd be like, I forgot. Who cares?
Yeah. Like again, if you were in a fantasy league with punishment.
Oh yeah, no, I wouldn't sign up for that shit.
But this year it's way better. I'd much rather do this. The last place finisher has to drive the rest of the league around, be the DD for a night out, and that's it. Like, why couldn't have done this when I was taking last back-to-back years? Why did I have to eat a bunch of pancakes and hot dogs and abuse my intestines?
That's not terrible. The only problem is you might deal with their drunken shenanigans. And since you're not part of the drunken shenanigans, it might be a little annoying, but to your point, it's better than sitting with a stomach full of pancakes and syrup. So, not terrible.
So, but Grant,
well, Dylan, Dylan, I'm not hoping you win this league. I'm just hoping you don't come in last place.
That's kind of the goal at this point right now, and I'm not off to a great start. I'm 1-3. Last week I was up like 110 to like 50, and then Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase decided to go nuclear war mode on Monday night, and I lost. I said some mean things to my friend that I didn't mean, but sometimes that happens in fantasy. But Grant,
Yes.
let's get into it. Do you want to recap the NFL week 4? Or do you want to recap college football week 5?
Let's go to the NFL this week. I think we started in college last week. Let's go to the pros.
No, we did it completely different. We usually start with our team of the week. We did disappointing. So we'll start with our week 4 NFL team of the week here. And
Yes.
we'll kind of just go back and forth here. But Grant, you
Yes.
you have the floor here. You got the first pick. Who is your week 4 team of the week?
I'm debating. I'm going back and forth, but because I have 2 teams I wrote down. But I talked about one of these teams last week, so I'm going to take the week off, and I'm going to take my other team, and we're going to go to the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday night in that whooping they laid down on the Buffalo Bills. And the reason why I really wanted to go with Baltimore is because I think they figured out their identity, and that is we're going to get in the pistol where we still have Lamar Jackson's skill set where we can get him in space. But since we're in the pistol, that means the big bad boy Derrick Henry can go downhill. And we saw what he did on Sunday night. First play of the game, when you go 87 yards. When you go 87 yards on the first play of the game and you're at 250 pounds and you're running at 21.5 miles an hour, we need to check him for steroids. I hope he got a random drug test on Tuesday this week.
That looked like the Derrick Henry high school film. If you've ever seen his stats from his senior year, that was the Derrick Henry that we saw.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, that's what it's like to try to tackle this man in a Florida high school. Yeah, no thanks. And also, like I said, Derrick went for 199. He went nuclear, but Lamar also added 54 on the ground. And I'm sorry, but anytime those two go for 253 yards rushing, not many teams in the NFL are going to beat them this year.
No.
And then also, just their defense, they've been playing better these last couple weeks. The first couple weeks of the year, you're sitting back and you're like, oh boy, Baltimore, this is not the same defense we're used to. But they've really kind of calmed down a little bit, and they didn't let Buffalo get going and dominate them in terms of the yak, because that's what Buffalo's been doing all year. They're not going deep. They don't have that deep threat, but they get the ball in space to their athletes, and they let those athletes make plays. Well, Baltimore didn't let them do that this week. They were running around. They were flying. You could tell it was Sunday night. And honestly, I think the all-black uniforms was a different mindset for Baltimore this week.
Baltimore on a Sunday night, I think if Baltimore is playing on a Sunday night and they're wearing black, bet on whatever the spread is on that, they're covering.
Yes.
And I think, the defense, that was kind of a question mark going in. But you got to remember they're breaking in a new defensive coordinator because Mike McDonald's the head coach up in Seattle now.
And also their D-line coach is now the D coordinator in Miami.
Yep.
So you're bringing in not only a new D coordinator, but their best probably position group last year was their D-line. And you got a new coach there too. So just some early season adjustments they had to make. And then also, real quick, Dylan, on that defense, they had 3 sacks on Sunday night against a Buffalo Bills O-line who's been playing really good this year, and 2 good tackles. They had 3 sacks and then 1 turnover.
And they did a good job of limiting James Cook, because that's kind of been the guy that gets that offense going, and he was really a non-factor in the game on Sunday night. But my team of the week here is I'm going to go down to the ATL. I'm going to go with the Atlanta Falcons. Now, this is not a pretty game by any means. They scored 26 points, two defensive touchdowns, 4 field goals by Younghoe Koo. And did you know this, Grant, that the Falcons, they are the first team to score 26 points without an offensive touchdown since 1983? I can't remember who it was.
I heard that today. Yes.
But do you know whoever it was? Do you know who they played when they won this way?
Did they also play the New Orleans Saints?
They also play the New Orleans Saints.
Yes. It's crazy, dude. Not Baltimore. Sorry, Atlanta, that first touchdown was on that muff punt. There was like 4 muff punt touchdowns on Sunday, or muff punts that led to touchdown. It was an awful day for special teams. I mean, you could argue a lot of players put the special and special teams on Sunday. Oh, God.
That was yes. But the I thought Arthur Smith was calling the offense again for the Falcons because Bijan Robinson only rushed the ball twice on Sunday. But when your defense scores 2 and you move the ball good enough to get into field goal range with a guy that's almost as automatic, and he's probably going to go miss 4 straight next week. Tomorrow because they play tomorrow.
Or when this, Dylan, when this is released to the public tonight.
Tonight, yes. Well, we are live, so
for the people who listen the next day, will be tonight.
Yeah, exactly. But Cousins, I still don't think he's fully comfortable yet. We're coming back from his Achilles. Just kind of the way they are play calling.
Well,
and the offensive line is still struggling, and it's an Achilles injury. So I probably know where you're going with this, but it's still, that's usually at least a 12 to 15 month recovery.
And we're still only at 11 months since Kirk ruptured that.
So
we still got a long way to go, and he's also 34, 35 years old. He's not a young kid anymore. And poor Jalen Phillips down in Miami, you can see even him. He's 24. He's young. He's having issues with his lower extremities coming off the Achilles from last year. He probably came back a little too fast. Or I think the leg that got hurt this year was the other one. But they're tough, man. Not everyone can be Aaron Rodgers, but also Kirk Cousins is not smoking as much peyote as Aaron is. So that's
peyote. Wow, you sound fancy there. But so who disappointing team? Who do you have?
Well, are we keeping the snake order? So technically, it's back to you, sir.
Well, it's just the 2 of us. So
all right. Well,
we can keep the snake order, but I guess I'll go. This week did not really peak. I wasn't fully engaged this Sunday with NFL football. Part of it was the Cowboys, and a lot of it too was I was glued to that Vikings-Packers game, which I guess that's a good transition. Since we're talking Vikings-Packers, I got to say the Packers are my disappointing team of the week. Jordan Love was coming back. They just won 2 games with Malik Willis. Matt LaFleur is looking like an offensive genius. And then they have turned the ball over 4 times. They get down 28-0. The secondary looked like a disaster, continues to be a disaster for the Green Bay Packers. Matt LaFleur acting like a petulant child, which I thought that was so awesome to see him getting unsportsmanlike. And I thought that was going to be like, oh, yeah, at worst, they're going to get a field goal, and to their credit, they go and score a touchdown. But to just get down 28-0 at home, your franchise quarterback is coming back. You're playing a rival, a team that most Packer fans look to as one of their little brothers. I don't know who do they look at the Vikings as a little brother, or is it more so the Bears?
They're both little brothers, if you ask me. But I think, hear me out. In this family dynamic, the Packers are the oldest. The Vikings, if you ask me, in terms of people in Green Bay land, are the middle child. People really don't give a shit about them. You kind of forget about them. But the Bears are the youngest. But it's that weird dynamic where mom and dad favor the oldest more because that kid made them parents. And he just looks down at his younger one like, hey, I know I'm the favorite, and I don't think much of you. Is that fair? But yeah, to answer your question, I think Packers fans want to own the Bears more than they want to own the Vikings.
Yep. And the Vikings hate the Packers more than they hate the Bears.
100%.
And then everybody's like whatever about the Lions. And So I'm guessing Hayden, our good friend from the Armchair Banter podcast, he comments on YouTube and says the Braves are the Padres' little brother right now. So I'm guessing I don't know if you have the baseball game on.
I
Grant,
have it
but
on my TV right now, and then when the Padres went up 5-1, I was like, "Oh, poor Hayden, he's not going to be happy." But I was like, you know
yeah.
what? I'm going to be mature. I'm not going to say anything, because that's not who I am. But actually, that game got so bad, I switched over to the Mets and Brewers.
And that one looks like a doozy here. So the big thing is making sure Frank the Tank's happy, and as long as these Mets win, because I could about imagine watching. What's that?
The
Dolphins. No, yeah, they ain't coming back. No, the biggest winner, or I should have done a spin on this because we have done players and units before with our team of the week and disappointing team.
Mm-hmm.
The player of the week this week was Tua because, oh boy, are the Dolphins bad. And this is also like why the Dolphins should fire their front office. It's like you have a quarterback who is a hit away from not playing ever again. It would probably be a good idea to invest in somebody other than Skylar Thompson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but that's just me.
And Hundley in Baltimore, where he always fell apart in the moments when was needed to make a big play. He always fell apart, and he's your guy. When you're paying Tyreek and Waddle both almost $30 million this year, what are we doing? And I just love the fact that Brian Flores is having a career year, and Tua out of nowhere this summer had to just totally shit in his cornflakes. Flores is looking like he's going to be the assistant coach of the year. Tua can't play football, and Mike McDaniel is trying to look more like a Miami model than a football coach. And he got an extension, and that extension is not going to matter because he's going to get fired soon because he sucks.
And I lost my train of thought here, but and you got to give credit Flores for it because when Tua made those comments, you how often do you see a coach kind of run, not really address it? He came out and he addressed it right away and handled
the next day.
Like I think he admits that he probably wasn't. I mean, it's his first year head coach. I mean, the defensive coordinator, they're always going to be a lot harder on quarterbacks than offensive minded coaches. And I mean, I think there were probably sections where Flores is right, and there's probably parts where Tua was right. And I think I think if you put both of them in a room, I think they could have an adult conversation because I do think Tua is an adult. He's a good player. He's established himself in the league. It just sucks that he just cannot stay healthy, and they're head injuries, and you have to be cautious with it. But I don't think anybody here on the podcast believed in the Dolphins, and it wasn't because part of it was we just didn't know if we could trust Tua, and they didn't address the offensive line at all this year, like in the offseason. And they let their pass rushers go. The running backs cannot stay healthy. They just need to fire their entire training staff. Stephen Ross might as well just sell the team and just start from scratch.
Well, Stephen Ross should just go back now that you can pay players in college. Just essentially become the head NIL guy for the University of Michigan.
Well, Portnoy is leading the charge on that. He did say that he would pay $3 million a year for a quarterback to come to Michigan.
Well, there you go. We're fixing the Michigan Wolverines with dollars, with dollar bills.
That's right.
There you are, Dylan. We're doing God's work.
That's right. But who do you, Grant, have for your disappointing team of the week?
So this is a first, Dylan. I'm really throwing a curveball out here for my disappointing team of the week. For the first time in the history of the NFL, my disappointing team of the week, who I have beef with, is a team who actually won on Sunday. And that would be the Las Vegas Raiders. Now you may ask, how is this disappointing when they won and beat the Cleveland Browns on Sunday 20-16 without Max Crosby and without Devontae Adams? Well, that last name right there is the reason why. They're running their best player out of town in Davante Adams because, listen to this. Can you believe this? In the NFL world we live in, where it is black and white, you come into work every single day, it's tough, it's not for the faint of heart, that some coach who wanted to come up with the Mahomes rule, liking a post on Instagram is the reason why he's going to lose his locker room and the reason why we both said we didn't understand his hiring in Antonio Pierce.
Wait, what? Did I miss something? Who?
Yes.
Like Antonio Pierce liked something on Instagram?
So Antonio Pierce liked a post on Instagram talking about how Davante Adams may have played his last down in a Las Vegas Raiders uniform. And upon hearing that, Davante Adams, who's already frustrated with the Raiders because they decided to roll with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell as their quarterback in the AFC West, and is frustrated with his
there's
role.
There's some good quarterbacks in that league, in that division.
Yes, there is. Has now requested a trade, and I will bet you $100 by the November 5th deadline, Davante Adams is no longer in Las Vegas, and their number one wide receiver is Jacoby Myers with Gardner Minshew as your quarterback, no running game, and nothing else. How does that happen?
They're the Raiders.
They're the Raiders, and you know what?
They're known to fumble these trades. And we were talking about it in the coaches chat that, like, I mean, I saw a thing on FanDuel where it was like they're going to trade to the Chiefs, which
that's not going to happen.
I mean, you know, if there was a franchise that would do it, but even then, because like I know that the Davis and Hunts do not like each other at all. And it goes back to when Al was running the Raiders, and there was some dispute with the AFL NFL merger, and then he wasn't able to move his team from get a new stadium in LA or something like that. That Clark or Lamar Hunt didn't approve of it or something like that. They do not like each other. And you don't trade them to the division. And let's be honest, it'd be obviously a win for the Chiefs because you're giving away draft picks, something that the Raiders have not drafted well at all the last 10, 15 years. Outside of Max Crosby, I mean, who else have they gotten that's worth anything? Nobody. So, but I think I saw that the Jets have already put out an offer for him. But
something tells me, dude, if they're not going to trade him within the AFC.
No. God, I mean, it'd be cool to see him on the Cowboys, but I also think they have bigger issues than receiver, even though Brandon Cooks is going to be out for a little bit. But you talked about the Ravens. I mean, the fact that they could have had him for $8 million and they don't pull the trigger on, like, and they're paying Zeke $6 million? Probably. Yeah. Who knows? Mm-hmm. But I would it probably isn't that much. I think it might be closer to $2 or $3 million. But I would take Derrick Henry for $8 million over Zeke Elliott or whatever he is. Because right now, the Cowboys' best option of running the ball is Hunter Lipke. Mm-hmm. And it's not bad. Like Bison guy right here. I love when they give Hunter Lipke the ball, but Hunter Lipke has a history of injury history going back to NDSU, where he just takes so many hits that he ends up having to sit out a few games. So, want to keep him fresh. And, they didn't address it, which going into the offseason, fine, because it thought, maybe they see something in Rico Dowell that we haven't seen yet, and but he has been very underwhelming. Devontae Foreman, Dalvin Cook hasn't played yet. I mean, if this is 2017, that's one hell of a backfield.
It's the best backfield in the NFL.
And I'm very disappointed that I never was able to come up in the conversation on this podcast about how this is the Cowboys' year. We've got a dominating backfield of Zeke Elliott and Dalvin Cook. And I know you or Ethan, you smug bastards, were going to be like, What is this? 2017?
2017, when they're both on their rookie contracts. And Dalvin was a second round pick. So that was a cheap contract.
Oh yeah. But
yeah,
all right. Well,
just the absolute inept that is the Las Vegas Raiders. And like Antonio Pierce talking this game, we got the Mahomes rule. We had the blueprint to beat them. Yeah, you mean when your offense scores 6 points and you don't complete a pass after the first quarter, in back-to-back plays, the Chiefs' offense gave you touchdowns. That's the blueprint, pal. Like, we just had a feeling this wasn't going to work. And if you're already running Devontae Adams out of town, it's just a mere matter of time before you run Max Crosby out of town. And the Raiders are who the Raiders are. An absolute joke.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And they should have just stuck with Rich Bisaccia after they fired Gruden.
That was the biggest mistake.
But they wanted to go with the sexy, flashy offensive coordinator that already had failed as a head coach. But and I know, Grant, this just pains you to see a AFC West rival just struggle this way, doesn't it? I can just see the sadness on your face.
It pisses me off.
Yeah.
But you know what's one conversation I love hearing, Dylan, is when people talk about kind of like when people like in college football, and people are like, college football is better when USC is good. The NFL is better when the Raiders are good. Well, you know what that means? That means they suck nowadays, and it's beautiful to hear. It's beautiful to hear that.
The Raiders haven't been good since we were in elementary school. I hadn't even received my first communion before since the Raiders were good. Which, my buddy Isaiah is a Raiders fan, so I don't know. He just has kind of accepted it. He's kind of like you with Iowa, where it's like, yeah, we suck. Like I'm just gonna laugh at any meme that gets sent to me.
Yep, that's all you can do.
So let's go down to the college ranks, Grant. Week 5 team of the week here. So who do you have for your team of the week?
Dylan, you're a little proud of me. Last week I took the low-hanging fruit for my game of the week.
Yep.
This week I'm going first. I could easily take the low-hanging fruit, but I'm not.
Oh.
I'm not. I'm sticking in that same conference, but we're going to give some love to the Bluegrass State and the Kentucky Wildcats.
Hey, that was a great choice. That was a great choice. That was an impressive win by
yes,
Mark. But I mean, this was your pick, so I'll let you talk before because I could talk about this for a little bit. So
because you look at Kentucky's year, and with home losses to South Carolina and Georgia already before this game, you got to think Saturday going into Oxford, you're staring 2 and 3 right in the face. And then, not to mention, also later on this year, Kentucky still has games against Tennessee, Texas, and a rivalry game with Louisville. If you lose this game, there's a chance you have 7 losses on the year. You're not getting to a bowl game, and now people are saying maybe Mark Stoops needs to go. And the winningest coach.
He actually was. He was on a plane to College Station, and then A&M made him turn around.
So sorry, this time he would have left, and they would have told him to leave. He wouldn't have left on his own terms. They would have said, "Hey, buddy, take the jet and get out of town." But and they held this high-flying Ole Miss offense to 17 points. That's an impressive feat that I didn't see happening in my college league, my college fantasy league this year. Jackson Dart's my quarterback, and Trey Harris is my number 1 wide receiver. Those guys are putting up points like there's no tomorrow. And coming into this game, I thought there was no way Kentucky was going to hold Ole Miss to under 34 points. Because I was like, okay, you hold a Georgia team to 13 points at home at games in Lexington. You're not doing that on the road in Oxford. And they did it. And who knows, maybe this win this weekend will catapult Kentucky for the rest of the year. Of those 3 games I mentioned, let's be honest, probably going to lose 2 of them. But you know what? Maybe they can pull off an upset. Maybe their defense is flying around, and maybe they can slow Tennessee down. Maybe they can slow Texas down. Maybe they can beat Louisville, and they can salvage their season. Kentucky, in a way, is one of those programs where they're going to be super high for 1 year, they're going to be down for 2 or 3, and then on that 4th year again, they're going to bounce back. You look at Kentucky in 2021 when they beat Iowa, when they went 10-2. Now is that time where they were down. They should be up again because those incoming freshmen are now adults, and they've developed and they've learned the culture that Stoops is trying to teach, and now they're setting the rules where they're doing that. Maybe this win can salvage their season into competitive SEC this year.
Well, and I think too is a good thing, something that Mark Stoops has done since he's been at Kentucky. Because you talked about being really high and then really low. He's kind of raised the floor to where Kentucky consistently is a 6-6, 7 can be that 7-5
I would
team, and then
I would say 7-5 on the floor.
Every few years, have that opportunity to win 9 or 10 games. Mm-hmm. And the weather was terrible. And it was kind of a game that really Kentucky was able to kind of control. Like, it never felt like Ole Miss had a handle on that game. They were able to kind of use that crappy weather to their advantage and really muck the game up, which you have to do on the road against a team that is on paper that is more talented than you. If you go back to that Georgia-Kentucky game, what was Stoops' biggest criticism of Stoops in that Georgia game is he wasn't aggressive enough. He kicked it when he probably should have went for it on fourth down. What did he do in this game? In one of the biggest drives of the game, it was a 4th and 7. They go for it on like their own 20-yard line, and they connect on like a 65-yard pass. So a little bit of exercising of the demons for Mark Stoops and the Wildcats. But the my team of the week here is can't believe I'm going to go where I am going here, but I got to give credit where credit is due. We've been very anti-Deion on this podcast, but I got to give it to the Colorado Buffaloes. I mean, they went down to Central Florida where it is hot, muggy. I mean, if you watch Big Noon Kickoff, Brandon Marshall was sweating through his suit. He talked about Ingram, and then Brandon Marshall, who was one of the guests on the...
He was the guest because he went to UCF. That's right.
Yep, and he talked about how he would get 2 IVs before the game, 2 IVs at halftime, 2 IVs after the game because that heat played such a factor on him. Colorado was 15-point underdogs going into this when it kicked, and they completely dominated Central Florida. And they, we'll give Deion and Pat Shurmur credit here where, our biggest criticism of them was they didn't even try, had zero interest in trying to run the football. And the last couple of weeks, you've seen them go from a, 1 running back, 4 wide receiver look to, a more 11 personnel going with a tight end, which gives them an extra blocker on the offensive line. And they've been able to kind of use that, play a little bit more of a complementary style of football. And I mean, you've got the best player in college football. Travis Hunter right now has to be the runaway favorite here. And I mean, as long as Colorado can keep this up, I think they're about to go into the teeth of their schedule here. They got a bye and then Kansas State next week. But I really thought that this was going to be a 3-9, 4-8 team. Now, I would probably say their floor is probably 5-7 the way their schedule sets up because Kansas isn't what they were. They're going to have a tough one with Kansas State. I think Texas Tech could be a tricky one. They look pretty salty.
They look good.
But this Colorado team is they aren't going away quietly. So we'll see. Because early on, they were 3-1 out of the conference, and it was like this feels like very much so that this is the same Colorado team. But they've actually looked a lot better. And we've talked about this with Dak Prescott, with Shadur Sanders. Sometimes less is more, where they're not putting all this pressure on him. It's not been so much daddy ball, where it has been that complimentary style of run the ball. They averaged like 4.5 yards a carry on Saturday. And, I'm not saying Colorado has to be balanced, but they still have to be effective running the ball. And I think they haven't gotten away from it where, you watch early in the season where it was like, oh, we ran the ball twice. We got 2 yards. Shadur, go throw the ball up. Somebody's going to be down there. And, but they'll without hesitation, they were dropping back 3 times, 2 incomplete passes and a sack. Shadur taking a giant shot on the field, and they'll just keep dropping back and throwing it. But to their credit, they've found a way to kind of salvage it and realize that they can't just lean on Shadur to bail them out all the time.
Yeah, and Dylan, to your point, when UCF should have had the advantage in this game, going in with that humidity, practicing in that. Colorado,
and the best rushing attack in the country.
Correct. Colorado could not prepare for that. The only, maybe go in the indoor and turn the heat up and see what that does, but that should have been such a clear advantage for UCF. And it wasn't. And credit Dion and his coaching staff for getting for conditioning his players throughout the summer and this week and having them ready to play.
So, all right. Well, that wraps up our week 5 team of the week in college football. Let's go look ahead here to our week 5 game of the week in the NFL. I'm still up here, and not a great slate here. I have 3 games written down, but I'm not overly, probably the best one on Sunday, or the one I'm going to go with here, is the Vikings versus the Jets in London. And Rodgers meets a familiar foe. Them coming off a putrid loss, and now their finger pointing is going on between Saleh and Rodgers about cadence. How Rodgers said that I'd start holding guys accountable if we can't do the cadence. I've been doing this my whole career.
Garrett Wilson talking about how simplistic their offense is.
Yep. Nathaniel Hackett feeling the heat again. But this game is going to come down to, I think, because the offensive line for the Jets still is not that great. The Vikings defense, Grant, like you said early, Brian Flores is probably the coordinator of the year right now in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's particularly close.
No.
If they're going to be able to get after him, and I think he's probably looking over at that Jets offensive line and he's thinking he's in New England again. Just salivating like, we're going to get to these guys. We're going to be in his face all day. And Brian Flores, throughout the years, has had a lot of success against the Packers. You look at in 18 when they played, I think they won like 34-13. They're going over to London. We'll see what that affects. But, the probably the most frustrating thing with the Jets offense this year it's almost like Arthur Smith is the head coach for them, where they forget that they have Breece Hall. Like last year where they would forget about Bijan Robinson, the Jets forget, like, where was Breece Hall? Especially in a monsoon of a game that was played in New York. They just decided to throw the ball for 50 times. So the Vikings, Sam Darnold's done a good job of not turning the ball over. I think he's going to meet a tough match with Sam Darnold in that Jets defense. But I think this is a game of, I think this is also a game where Kevin O'Connell will coach Robert Saleh off the field, because the Vikings coaching staff is far better than what the Jets have.
The Jets,
this is what like Michael Lombardi would refer to as look at the court. Look, this is a coordinator game. Brian Flores versus Nathaniel Hackett. Who are you picking?
Give me Flores.
Yeah.
I mean, this reminds you of when this is why the Patriots are so successful for all those years in the AFC East. It was just a coaching mismatch against everyone they were playing. The Patriots opened up those games. They were up 10-0. I don't know how, but the game started with 15 minutes left to go in the first quarter, and they were up 10-0.
Yep.
Just based off coaching, and that's at least how it looks on paper right now for this game on Sunday. Because Saleh is in over his skis. He's going to be fired after this year. Nathaniel Hackett for sure is going to lose his job, and he's never going to be a coach in the NFL again. And then the Jets D coordinator, is he a good defensive coordinator, or does he just have good personnel and he runs that boring Seattle 6 defense in his front?
Who is their D coordinator?
He's the guy, backwards hat, beard.
Yeah.
He was
I can't think of his name either.
He
was on Hard Knocks, I remember. He was like their D-line coach, wasn't he?
He was defensive coordinator, worked with the D-line a lot. He was Dan Quinn's linebackers coach in Atlanta during the 16 when they went to the Super Bowl. I remember seeing him there. Like I said, he runs that Seattle 6, and he's got such great personnel with his D-line and these corners. But low-key, the Jets D-line hasn't been getting after people this year a whole lot, and the one time they did was against the Patriots, and the Patriots have a Division II college offensive line.
And that's really the only time the Jets have looked good this year. That's the one game that they've looked good, and it was against Gerard Mayo and the Patriots.
And it's nothing against Gerard Mayo, but that roster is the worst roster in the NFL.
Yep.
In the Patriots, so I don't think this Jets D coordinator is a particularly good coach. I just think he's got good personnel. And when your front can get after it so much, that Seattle 6 defense is so hard to stop because they attack everything so well. But if you can block them up, which I think the Vikings can with those 2 tackles, it could be a long day because they're just going to sit back, and KOC is going to find everything. He's going to find the holes in this zone. And Sauce Gardner does not travel. So Justin Jefferson's not going to be blanketed by the number 1 all game. So it'll be interesting.
It will. Who do you got for your game of the week?
Dill, I'm with you. I'm not excited for this week as the NFL. It's just a bad week, frankly, to be honest. But I think my game of the week.
You know what we root for? We root for chaos.
We root for utter chaos.
We root for a great witching hour.
Oh, and you know what? Looking at the schedule on Sunday, it's going to happen. These games are.
I was looking at this and I was like, "Oh, this is going to be an ugly game. This is going to be an ugly game. This is going to be an ugly game." Oh.
And what sucks is the game at 3:25 on Fox or CBS, Rams Packers. That game has been decimated by injuries. To start the year, you look at this game and you're like, okay, low key, I mess with this game a little bit, but the Rams have no healthy. The Rams have no healthy players.
No.
And apparently, I think Jordan Love came back maybe a week or two too early.
Yep.
And the Packers receivers still do not want to catch the football.
No.
So that's exciting. But we're done talking about shitty games, and we're going to talk about my game of the week, which is going to be the first game of the week tomorrow night.
Bucks Falcons. Good choice. I had that on my list too. I had that and Bills Texans. That's really the Bills Texans is the only one that's going to be and it sucks that that's an 11:00 game.
I know. Well, you know what? It's because the NFL looked at it when all these teams were healthy and such, and they were like, okay, we got Bills Texans. That can be the best game at the noon hour, and then we'll go out to the West Coast with Packers Rams. So when they make the schedule, it makes sense. But football happens and people get hurt. But I'm going to go Bucks, Falcons. Falcons, last game on a 3-game homestand. Playing 4 of their first 5 at home, which is kind of crazy. But big game in the NFC South in this aspect. If Tampa Bay wins and they get to 4-1, Atlanta falls to 2-3. With a loss in the division. But then also, depending on what happens with the Saints, the Bucks could have a stranglehold on this division. And with how impressive the Bucks looked last Sunday, Baker coming out and scoring 24 points off the rip, and with how fast Tampa Bay's defense was, I think they sacked Jalen Hurts 6 times last week. With how banged up Atlanta's offensive line is and Kirk's lack of mobility and the success the Chiefs had 2 weeks ago blitzing Cousins, because
it's on a short week too.
And it's on a short week too. And let's not act like Atlanta's wide receivers are God's gift to football, or they can get separation, they can get open. They can't. I think Bowles is going to come and he's going to test these receivers. So it'll be a challenge for the Falcons, too. So I'm excited for this game just because it's such big implications for a division where it looks like you're only going to get one team in the playoffs from this division the way things are playing out this year. And whenever any team in the NFC South plays, I don't care if it's at Thursday night, Sunday night, Monday night, or if it's Sunday at 11, it's going to be a close competitive game with a crazy finish that makes no sense.
Yep, with Younghoe Koo lining up to kick like a 65-yard field goal.
65-yarder.
That's going to be good from 70.
With the roof open and the wind swirling in Atlanta. It makes no sense, but that's what's going to happen.
Uh-huh. You're probably right. And I'm here for it. Actually, I won't even get to watch the game. That's why I didn't pick this game, is because we actually play tomorrow night. We have a Thursday night game, so won't be able to watch really any of it. Possibly the end, as long as we don't have like a 2-hour rain delay that started at kickoff, which I didn't even tell you about 2 weeks ago. Is all my years of coaching never dealt with a rain delay at all. Back-to-back weeks, we had rain delays, or I shouldn't say rain, lightning delays. Lightning delays. Yep. But the let's go to the college ranks. Week 6 here. We'll stay with you, Grant. What do you got for your week 6 game of the week? And there's not a whole lot going on here in this week.
No, there's not. I had to do some digging. And when I went to ESPN today to look at the games, I had to go FBS as a whole. I just couldn't do the top 25 because, like you said, not a great week, but it's setting up.
I think there's like one top 25 matchup. I think it's only between Missouri and Texas A&M. And neither of those teams really excites me. It's going to be that'll be a grinder out game. I think it's going to be low scoring defensive battle.
Like I said, I think A&M is a better team. They are with Mike Elko and Colin Klein calling the shots compared to when Jimbo's there, but they're not there yet. But that's still not my game of the week. I'm going to go Texas Tech and Arizona. In a wide open Big 12 this year. Like right when you think Utah's got this thing in the bag and they're running to the playoff, they lose to this Arizona team last week. Texas Tech is 4-1 and they win a shootout last week against Cincinnati. And all of a sudden these two teams, Arizona is coming off a really that bad loss to Kansas State. But again, like I said, they beat Utah last week. These two teams are thinking, you know what? We win this game and we get hot into mid-October, we have a chance to go to Dallas for the Big 12 title game. And in return, a home playoff game. And from 2014 to 2023, we never would have associated Arizona and Texas Tech with the college football playoff. And that's the exciting part about this new brand in college football with the 12-team playoff. So in a wide open conference, two teams who are coming off big wins and looking to build this thing, I'll say Texas Tech, Arizona as my game of the week.
I did not have that one here. And well, I guess I technically have two because we're going to preview NDSU UND after this. But, I also, Grant, I'm sure you're not very excited about this one, but the Iowa-Ohio State game has a potential. Caleb Johnson is a stud. He's been running the ball. Iowa's offense, and they've had a week to prepare. The offensive line has started to look some semblance of what it looked like pre-COVID, where they've been able to run the ball, and it's really helped open up the pass. You've seen them be a little bit more dynamic in the passing game. And Iowa, they've ran the ball really successful. And Ohio State's weakness on the defensive side is the D-line, which has been underwhelming, which a lot of people looked at as a strength going into this year. But that D-line has underperformed at times this year, and that's kind of been where they've been vulnerable. And the other part, too, is Iowa is always going to be good to force a couple of turnovers. If they're able to force Will Howard a couple of turnovers, I'm not saying Iowa's going to pull off the upset because I don't think there's any way this is going to happen. But I do think I'm just laying out the blueprint for how Iowa could make this a game. But my game of the week here is going to be, we're going to go someplace I never thought I would be going here, but I've somehow turned into a little bit of a Cal fan. I think Justin Wilcox is a tremendous coach. I mean, that place seems absolutely impossible to win with the high academic standards. If that place announced they weren't having a football team anymore, they were dropping football, that's a campus that does not care at all. And all they've done this year is they are 4-1 and should be 5-0 with a win over Florida State, which they just weren't able to quite punch it in. But this game it's a 10:30 kickoff Eastern time for Miami. Game day's coming there for the first time in history. You can't speak enough about how good of a coach Justin Wilcox is. Miami got away with a win last week, and then they got to go all the way up to Cal. Probably a game that they thought, oh yeah, we'll win, whatever. But if you're Miami, you got to be flying out there tomorrow or even tonight just to get acclimated to the time change, because kicking off at 10:30 o'clock Eastern time is not going to be easy.
No, you're used to being in the shower at this point, getting ready to go out for a night on the town, and no, you're starting.
Which would be a lot of fun in Miami.
Which would be a lot of fun in Miami. I mean, look at Auburn last year when Auburn went to Cal. They lost. And
a game that I know you stayed up for and watched from start to finish.
Honestly, I don't. You know what's crazy, dude? I was off that weekend, and I actually watched that game, but I think I fell asleep midway through the third quarter because I was like, two, these teams are terrible, and two, it's 11:45, and we still have 8 minutes to go in the third quarter. I'm exhausted.
Well, and that's the other thing too. I think that probably affected Cal was their second time in 3 weeks traveling to the Eastern time zone, because the 2 weeks before that they were playing Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess we will kind of shit on you here. You also fell asleep for the when it was 33-15 in the Alabama-Georgia game. So, I mean, sleep is undefeated on Grant here.
Yes, it is.
But that is a game, and I mean, Miami showed some weaknesses, showed where they could be exposed last week here. So, we're going to find out what they're made of. I think you're going to have a good idea of what this team is. If they come out and handle their business and that it's 25-2 or something in the first quarter, it was like, okay, Miami's for real. Virginia Tech was a little bit of a fluke. But I think Cal gives them a game for at least 2.5 quarters.
And again, the ACC, just like the Big 12, a conference that is wide open.
Yep. So, which, I mean, this is what we get with the ACC, being on the East Coast and the West Coast, because, Hayden just brought up here in the chat too that Stanford had to go to Syracuse, and then they had to turn around the next week and go play in Clemson. Ugh.
So stupid.
And it's not like it's the NFL where you can just hang out for a week. You got to go back to class. And so Stanford's kicker is actually from Fargo, kicked at Shanley, and he was the guy that kicked the game winner. And he said that they didn't get back to Palo Alto till like 5 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, on Saturday?
That's Saturday morning, yeah.
And then they probably had to leave on Thursday.
Yep. Because I know Michigan, they're flying out tomorrow to go to their game against Washington. But
okay.
Which I think you're going to see a lot. You're going to have to see a lot more of, because I mean,
yeah,
these are college kids. They are creatures of habit. And even in the NFL, you see them when they go on those West Coast, East Coast trips. They come out a little bit sluggish in that first half. Yeah,
dude. Washington last week had to go to New Jersey on a Friday night.
Yep. It's like a 5 hour. That's like a 7 hour flight.
That's just ridiculous.
So Do we get to should we get to the real game of the week before we wrap the show up here?
Sender.
All right. Well, it is rivalry week in North Dakota. NDSU versus UND. NDSU is looking for revenge from last year. This game, the big thing is last year UND had two big plays on special teams. They returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown. They had a blocked punt. NDSU got boat raced in Grand Forks. It was one of the worst games that I've ever watched and had to live through. Because I did talk a lot of shit and I had to sit there and take it. And it was terrible. Mm-hmm. But then UND got scared and laid an egg in the first round of the playoffs and had to dipped out because they didn't want to play NDSU because they knew it was coming. I guess just had to wait a year for it to come around. The big thing is defensively. Last week they looked really good stopping the run. Before, when they were playing East Tennessee and even Towson, it wasn't as consistent as you would have liked it. I mean, East Tennessee ran for like 260 yards against the Bison. Towson, NDSU for about 2.5 quarters, they did actually a pretty good job, and then they had a couple of long ones after the game was kind of put out of reach, but Towson made it a game. But and then on the offensive side of the ball, the Marty Brown emergence has been a sight to see. You finally see a running back. They're kind of getting back to, those early dynasty days where they have Marty Brown has really emerged as the guy that you can lean on to give you 20, 25 carries a game if need be. He's breaking tackles. Hasn't broken a long one right yet. I was watching Polisek's press conference before we started tonight, and he talked about he's going to be due for a big one. And the other thing, too, that his emergence has done, it's really taken the pressure off of Cam Miller's legs, who has not had to rely on running the ball as much, and he's been able to be more of that drop-back pass guy, and he's having a tremendous year. He's completing almost 80% of his passes right now, has not had an interception yet this year, and the receivers have been tremendous, and they've done it outside of week one with Raja Nelson and Braylon Henderson. They've been out since the Colorado game. The emergence of Bryce Lance has emerged as the number one guy. Fellow Mankato West Scarlet, Mekhi Collins, has had some nice games, caught in a couple of touchdown passes. It's probably the deepest they've been at receiver in maybe ever. Cade Osterman, I don't know if you remember him. I think he's from like Elk River, Minnesota. He was familiar. He used to play for the Gophers and then transferred. And then the freshman that's from Omaha as well. He's a true freshman, and I can't think of the guy's name right now. Number 81, but he looks like a stud. He broke a punt return, which I'd love to see NDSU be able to do is to get a touchdown on special teams or flip the field, get a short field. In that realm. And then on the defensive side is the biggest thing is you number one, stop the run. They kind of have a bit of a three-headed monster at running back, running the ball between their quarterback, and they've got two really good running backs that have been really good this year. And the offensive line has been, which was a question mark going into the year, has been really overperformed and done a good job. And I think a lot of it is with their offensive coordinator, Isaac Fruchty, who's been a nice addition after Freund left and went to South Dakota State. But the Jackson Williams is the receiver that I was talking about. That's the true freshman from Omaha. And the quarterback, there was a big question at quarterback after Schuster left. And it was Simon Rumpho, which, fun fact, Grant, in all the games that he has started at quarterback from high school to now, he has one loss, and that is to Iowa State.
No,
so he has never lost. Yep. And he had, but prior to the game last week, he did have more interceptions than touchdowns. So I think it's crucial NDSU finds a way to bait him into a touchdown interception, because he has been known to this year. He's turned it over and find a way to limit Bo Belquist, who's probably the best receiver in FCS this year. A new Rockford kid. His dad played for the Bison, was actually part of the played for NDSU in their last game. NDSU UND played in the D2 era. And could have left, could have gotten some big money offers from somewhere from an FBS school, but chose to stay at UND. And he always has played his best, saved his best games for NDSU. This is going to be, I think this is going to be a high scoring game. I think the first to 35 wins it. I think it's going to be who can limit the mistakes, and that's been a knock on Cam Miller too. Is in these bigger games, UND, SDSU, or UND last year against SDSU, he hasn't played his best in his biggest games. He needs to change that. I think the way he played against Colorado, I think that's given him a lot more confidence. He's throwing the ball really well. He's generating a lot of draft buzz as well. And I think they also have an advantage in the passing game too, because UND at safety is starting a true freshman and I think a redshirt freshman or a sophomore this is their first year starting. So I think they have some advantages there. But as long as NDSU is able to stop the run and run the ball, I think they're going to find a way to pull this game out. But so Grant, you got any questions or things to add to this game?
I think you covered all the bases there, pal.
Did I? All right. Well, then we'll go to curveball of the week, and I have it. So I was kind of waiting around for games to start, and I was like looking in podcast studio here, and I was like, wow, this is kind of dusty, and this came to me here. So what was something as a kid, a punishment that was like if you screwed up big time, you knew this punishment was coming that your parents knew that you hated and that you were going to have to do if you whenever you got in trouble?
You know, it's such a simple house task, but even to this day, Dylan, you would know, living with me for over a year, vacuuming the house.
Oh, good one.
Something as a kid I just absolutely totally despised. I did not want to do it. And it wasn't like I had to vacuum just the living room. No, it was my room, the TV room off the kitchen. There's another level downstairs, and then we had a full basement. Yeah, there's 4 levels to my parents' house.
I was just thinking about that. Yep.
Mm-hmm. There is 4 levels to Daryl and Mary's house, and they would make me vacuum all 4 levels.
And then they inspected it and they probably found every little thing. You missed the spot. You got to go back and redo it.
Yep. Oh, sorry, son. You got to go back and you got to do that again.
What was a punishment that you did that would make them do that?
Probably tormenting my sisters, or not. You know, if they said, "Hey, be home at a certain time," being home after that. You know, probably the big one was, you know, I'd say curfew. You know, just being late or going out or not being somewhere on time when they maybe had to leave somewhere and I caused them to be late. You know, something along those lines. But like more than likely, probably curfew and them thinking he's going to be young and dumb and put himself in a situation to hurt himself, being out later than he should be. So guess what? He's got to vacuum the house now.
Nothing good happens after midnight, Grant.
Nothing good happens after midnight.
That's right. So my punishment was how I came up with this is my room. I had a bunch of like figurines. I had a bunch of Twins bobbleheads. I had just like sports memorabilia in my room on this. And it probably wouldn't have been as bad if I didn't have that. But when my parents would make me dust my room.
That's another good one too.
Oh, and it was just so tedious too. Because you were wiping everything down. You had to wipe it, and then, oh nope, that doesn't look good. You got to get it again. I'm like, and I think I had like 4 levels of it, and I'm like, this sucks.
And also, you know, when
and the worst part about it too is, I didn't get to I had to just I had a TV in my room, or I'd have like back when we had CDs or something, or like radio, or couldn't listen to that either. It was no, you will dust in silence and think about what you've done.
And like it's one of those where if you do have some memorabilia or some bobbleheads, hats, anywhere else, you got to take all them down, put them on the floor, clean your certain area, and then put them back up and almost redecorate your room again.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's just brutal. You know what's funny? You mentioned even to this day that one thing my mom hates doing is dusting her house.
Oh, it's terrible. To
your same point, she said, "Oh, it's just awful."
I'm allergic to dust too.
Oh,
so
you can't catch a break.
No, it was just you sit in silence, and it's like, ugh.
That's when you sit back and you're like, how can people want to sit back and be a maid or clean houses for a living? Like, this is brutal.
Oh, it's terrible.
What?
It's the same thing. Even like when I clean my house. I mean, and I actually do clean like a fair amount, especially like my kitchen area and that area. Like vacuuming, if I get to it once a month, I'm doing pretty good. But usually it's like about a once a 3 month type of deal. Bathroom. Bathroom, I try to get about once every other week, or making sure it's shiny, wiping the mirrors, cleaning the toilet. And those don't take long. The shower is what is the thing I hate cleaning in the bathroom too, especially because most of the time I'm the one I let it go, and then it gets worse and worse, and then you're really scrubbing.
Mm-hmm. Dylan, it's funny you mentioned vacuuming. I like I said, I hate vacuuming too. I can tell it's bad when there's multiple clumps of dog hair down here, and I'm just like, and then there's also debris that she's brought in. If there's leaves, or just maybe pieces of bone that have ripped off that she's ripped off, and I'm like, okay, yeah, it's time to clean up down here. Like, this is bad. But then I walk up, then I go upstairs, and I see how much dog hair is upstairs, and I'm like, man, I don't have it that bad, because Alec and I, we have an agreement. I'll vacuum the downstairs. He's got the upstairs.
That's a good agreement right there.
It's a good agreement. I mean, my room's downstairs, his is upstairs. It's his house, but it's also his dog. And
correct.
So it works out.
But that, dusting, basically anything cleaning. There's unless like I'll also rage clean. Like if I'm angry or something, or like I'll just start scrubbing, and and somehow I always feel better about it. But
that's a thing for people.
But that I think that wraps up this week's episode. Thanks to everybody who tuned in. Here we will we'll have a full recap and a full preview of next week's games. We'll probably talk a little bit of baseball, playoff baseball, with Ethan back here. What do we got for the scores? Has Hayden's mood changed at all? And it. No, top of the sixth.
They got one back.
They did, and it looks like we're actually going to have a game 3 in the wild card round, because the Brewers completed a comeback.
Mets. So they had an electric bottom of the 8th.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But all right, well, check us out on all of our social medias. Make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube here, and until next time, we'll see you then.